right now we turn to the phone lines to find one of the best columnists that's out there. I always click on what this man writes, as I said at the outset of the last segment, or leaving it before he called in. Anything that Dan Wetzel writes is always well thought out, well executed, and he joins me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Thanks for calling in, Dan. I appreciate it.
Hey, you're going to introduce me like that? I'll call every day. I appreciate it.
You got it. Well, I've told you this. I've DM'd you that, too.
No.
You know, so I might as well. I always say in public what I'll say in private to most people, to their face. Dan Wetzel joining me here on the program. So what happened with Syracuse? I mean, I've seen, when you normally see schools slap down, there's usually 5, 6, 7 bullet points that you can pull out of a report to say this happened, that happened. I've seen only a couple of them with Syracuse, and it makes it seem like the Republic has fallen in central New York. What can you tell me about these sanctions, Dan, that sticks to you?
Well, I think it goes into 3 parts. I think you have the NCAA requires each school to do its own drug testing policy if they want to do any at all. And so some are more lenient than others. Like BYU, you're expelled from school. First thing you do, you know, even if you drink a beer, you're expelled from school. Others obviously do not apply that kind of standard. So each school is supposed to have a policy, whatever it may be, and then they are obligated to follow the policy. So one of the things is that it's fairly clear that Syracuse vastly ignored their own drug testing policy and drug policy for a number of years with a number of athletes. So there's one bullet point violation. The other was academic eligibility. You had not just tutors doing papers. You had actual members of the basketball staff signing into emails of players and sending emails on behalf of the players, like pretending they were the players to certain professors and things like that. You had a really orchestrated effort to keep a player named Fab Mello eligible in really a critical season when Syracuse looked like they could win the national title. You had academic fraud on that level. And then the third one is, a guy working at the local YMCA who was basically providing some pay for football and basketball players for not really doing any work. And that totaled what they could find, like $8,000 on 6 players. So, you know, we're not really talking big money here. But those would be the 3 bullet point things. I think what made it a bigger scandal is it happened for a long time, and the NCAA itself concluded that Jim Boeheim knew of these things or had had something to do with it, or certainly should have known what was going on over that long of a period of time.
Well, your latest column says that the chancellor of Syracuse has laughably missed the mark with the response. So put a little bit more meat on that bone for me, Dan.
Well, you know, it's never a surprise when the school – it's boilerplate damage control. What you do is you sit there and say, hey, we made some mistakes. We blame some rogue people that we fired. And then you kind of play the victim card and say the NCAA investigated us too long or whatever. The chancellor's job is to appease boosters, and boosters want their athletic department to not only win, but a lot of them want to kind of subscribe to this Peter Pan ideal that our school doesn't do what I don't think anything I just described really would surprise any person who knows anything about college or high school athletics, right? I mean, it really wasn't shocking stuff. But there's the big booster wants to pretend that isn't happening. So the ADs and the presidents and chancellors have to do that. The weird part about the chancellor's thing was really just this one part of his letter where he said, you know, this case took too long. We were under investigation for 8 years, and you know, playing the victim card. Woe is us. And he said, you know, the 1919 Black Sox scandal took 2 months. Right. Well, the 1919 Black Sox scandal was a baseball scandal from 96 years ago. I don't really think it's relevant case law here. It's not even an NCAA scandal. But more importantly, it was just absurd. The reason it only took 2 months, it really didn't take 2 months, it took 2.5 years. But there was a trial, a criminal trial, where all the evidence was presented. There's subpoena power, there's police, there's plea deals. I mean, it's a totally irrelevant case. And then they acquit all of the people. And then because Major League Baseball gave him the commissioner unbelievable powers, he just banned everyone for life anyway. So that would mean like Mark Emmert just sits there and says, oh, I'll review all the evidence in a criminal trial, and then I'll go the other way on it. It was such an absurd thing. And I think what it says is a guy like the Chancellor of Syracuse really has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to the NCAA. But when you talk about who makes the NCAA rules, it's people like the Chancellor of Syracuse. It's campus leaders, it's presidents and chancellors. It's not these workers in Indianapolis. They're just the beat cops, and they're just they're just told to go out and do what they're supposed to do. They don't set the speed limit. They just catch violators in the speed limit. So I think it just shows the disconnect between a guy that clearly is way out of his league talking about college sports and complaining about it, but he's the one who could actually change it.
Maybe you never saw 8 Men Out, Dan. Maybe you should rent that movie for him.
You seem to think this was a great system of justice.
Dan Wetzel of Yahoo.
Joe Jackson would say otherwise.
Yeah, that's right. Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports joining me here right now. So do you think Boeheim should be out when it's all said and done? Is that what you believe?
You know, I don't know. I'm not good at just firing guys for it. Syracuse doesn't care. This is the cost of doing business. And,
wow.
I mean, it just is. The boosters don't care. School doesn't care. They won't say it, but they don't care. None of these schools care. You cannot be involved in this stuff and win at Syracuse for 40 years without looking the other way on some pot tests and helping some kids. I mean, they shouldn't have done it.
What a rosy thought to have on our minds as we get set for March Madness, Dan.
This is college basketball. I mean, look at our Hall of Fame coaches in college basketball, our current Hall of Fame coaches. Pitino, Boeheim, Roy Williams got the whole academic scandal going. Even Kay had a player misbehaving this year. It's college basketball. Anyone around college basketball was not surprised by what went down at Syracuse. They would not be surprised if these exact same scandal hit at any of 100 other schools. So
before I take a sports shower, let's hit the Aaron Hernandez trial, since you've been covering that too, Dan. Why do you think this has been so underreported? It's been reported on, I guess, not as discussed. This has not really been at the mindset of the sports fan or the sports media. It hasn't been at the forefront. To what do you attribute that, Dan?
It's a very, very good question. I don't know. There is not a lot. There's only 2 sports reporters who are there, myself and Kevin Armstrong of the New York Daily News. And I'm not there today, but have been there. There's not a lot of national attention. There's a lot of national interest. I can assure you that by the metrics we get. And it's a fairly colorful trial at times. It's also a little slow. I do think the time of year, if this was the summer, we might have more coverage. But I'm not sure. It's not getting a lot of coverage on certainly not on ESPN or anything like that. But you think about the NFL, Rich. We cover. I'll blame myself on this. I cover some of the dumbest stories ever invented. Is Marshawn Lynch going to talk to the media today? Right? Mm-hmm. Hey, I stood there. I'm as bad as anyone else. And yet here we have a trial, we have a story that is 100% relevant and real. We have murder. We have a star player for one of the signature franchises in the NFL. And there's a little bit of a whodunit. Is he guilty or innocent? This is a real story and a big story. And yet, I don't know, maybe it's just the way America media works. You can get 500 cameras for Marshawn Lynch to say, I'm just here not to get fined. Yeah. And you get a couple guys, there's like 12 reporters there every day, mostly from the local papers and TV. And that's it for an actual murder trial. Dan
Wetzel, Yahoo Sports, joining me here now. So I know it's been going on for a couple of months now. And just like any case like this, there's minutia and evidence and DNAs and things of that nature. Can you boil down what the crux of this case so far looks to be and where it's headed for us, Dan?
Well, the key to the case is can the prosecution convincingly place Aaron Hernandez at the murder scene? And they have certainly shown the evidence to be able to do that. And I think they will at the end. That basically at 3:23 in the morning, Aaron Hernandez, 2 of his buddies, and Odin Lloyd, the victim, drive behind an industrial park into an empty field near Hernandez's home. 5 minutes later, the car comes back out. There's only 3 guys in the car. The next day, a high school kid's jogging, takes a shortcut through the woods, finds Odin Lloyd's body with gunshot, killed from gunshots. One of the gunshot casings is in the rented car. Basically, they can put Hernandez at the scene under what they call joint venture in Massachusetts, if you are a willing witness or participant in a crime, you can be convicted of first-degree murder, even if they're never going to be able to prove whether Hernandez pulled the trigger or one of the other guys pulled the trigger. As long as they can prove that, and so far they're doing a pretty good job of it, they should get the conviction. Now, this is the jury. You have no idea. We've seen all sorts of crazy verdicts through the years.
Yes.
But the defense is yet to really – now, the defense hasn't gone yet, so we get to see what they got. But so far, we've seen no exculpatory evidence. We've seen no alibi. We've really seen no suggestion that Hernandez wasn't there. And so they don't have a lot to work with.
So then if
you get that, that's the case.
Why are we seeing babysitters put on the stand talking about how Hernandez is hitting on her? What does that have to do with anything, Dan?
Well, it gave us something to write about for a day, so that was good. No, in this case, there's a lot of pressure on the prosecution, and I think they're going to be – and there's a huge defense team for Hernandez. They are fighting over inches on the football field, but we're still at the 5-yard line in Hernandez's thing. Basically, Hernandez is saying that one of his defenses, life's great, and why would he kill his friend Odin, and he's got this great – he's going to get married, and he's got this baby and all that, and they're showing, well, actually he's out there hitting on the babysitter. I think there's also a prosecution hoping that by putting out he tried to get with the babysitter, it might help cause Hernandez's girlfriend to flip on him. Right now, she's going to be compelled to testify, but she can either testify or take contempt of court. And right now, it looks like she's going to stick with Hernandez. So maybe that drives a wedge in there. But it's not a relevant fact in terms of whether he murdered her, but it's all part of the gamesmanship of a trial.
So when are you hearing you think this might be put in front of the jury? We talk about April, May? What do you think, Dan?
I think early April. I think we got a couple more weeks here, and then I don't know how long the defense can really go. I'm not really sure what the defense has other than you didn't prove your case. So Dan, I don't expect a long defense.
Dan, thanks for calling in. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Rich.
You bet. That's Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.